So this weekend's project, using the Pazload nail gun to speed up progress here. Fortunately, the client had his own saw already set up, so or boss or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, I'm working with this guy, helping him with this building here. And so the system in kind of a tight workspace is to build all these trusses on the ground. So just building them on a 3 sawhorse method. You know, these little tie plates are specification for this type of thing, right? But we're not a big fan of them because they kind of flex and stuff like that. So I really prefer to make the gussets out of wood. And also all these things are double gusseted, which is a little bit overbuilt, but good, okay? Because this thing isn't going to really have a ridge beam. Not the way this truss construction works. And by building them all on top of each other, instead of having to measure out each individual one, like there's little variance here, but by the time we get it all up, I think it's still going to go together pretty well. And then, yeah, not a lot of variance on that, because that's going to be like where the ceiling stuff goes. And I'm just going to watch that curvature, but the thing is because it's a little narrower here, set the spaces right, we're going to be good. This is framing, not finished carpentry. But that's the trick, is building this stuff all at the same time, one on top of the other. You know, once you get into the groove of building these things, they can go pretty quickly. It's just you know, cutting out all the pieces and making sure those tops get right. And but the big thing on this is setting up, like, you know, basically a work table or a panel table type of thing to kind of mass produce these. And then the ends have to be built differently, because you need an end to be flat, and getting the end up here is going to be a little tricky, but I've got a plan for that, and we'll show that in a little bit. Except it's going to be one of those situations where I don't have somebody to hold the camera. So here we go. Okay, so one of the things I ran into here is we made all the trusses on a table like I showed in the other video. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm doing it. I just document some of these with a video. So this is John, my New English carpenter here, good guy. So when I made all these trusses in a stack, I didn't account for the fact that one needs to be flipped over. So if they're off center just a wee little bit, at this stage, you know, as far as we could tell, it was maybe an inch and a half. Then one ended up off the other, so I had to pull it back off so we can flip it around. And it actually works a hell of a lot better than trying to trim everything. So it's just about to go back up, and we end up with some extra wood cladding on both sides. That's not really a problem. So here we are, more progress. One of the things we run into, I mean, there's not a whole lot of waste going on here. That's a pretty good effect on small waste pile. But whenever we're working with something that doesn't quite come out to pure 4x8, we end up with some other waste on the plywood. You know, hopefully I'm going to incorporate this into some other stuff, but that's our roof thing. I taped the living crap out of that stuff just because I want it double and triple sealed. This is Oregon. It's also caulked underneath. We got to make a cutout here for a window. I prefer to just build the wall first and then do the cutouts. And of course, I'm going to see what plywood I have left over for filling this in, because I didn't frame the uprights on this. Somebody else did. But they were compensating for the fact that some of the concrete work here was sloped a little bit to facilitate drainage. But because of that, then there was some shimming done here to make sure that top sill was relatively level. And somehow in the mix of things, they lost the true 16-inch center on these things. So the spacing, sometimes it was made sense to trim one of the 4x8s, other times it made more sense just to add a stud. Otherwise we're just going to be trimming a whole lot of wood. And then for the roofing, you know, decent. We had a couple of shoot throughs on the nails, not too bad. I can chew those off, but it's not too bad. Of course, there's the trusses. That was only my second effort at constructing trusses from scratch. But I constructed them from a prototype that the guy had done, had left. And it wasn't exactly precisely the same left to right, but so that ended up getting repeated throughout the roof. Now we took this and we flipped it so that that was going to work okay. But I keep thinking the eaves come down at slightly different heights, but I got to double and triple check that. If it did, it's going to really get blended into everything. So, but this is, you know, it's a large shed, small garage type thing. And as we would incorporate this into small cottage construction, the only other thing we run into is, you know, a lot of times there's materials and caulking and wrapping and other things that aren't absolutely necessary for just a bare bones shed, but we're looking at kind of overbuilding this building, you know, just so it's good and strong and secure. Better to have a little extra and make something a little stronger than skip something. But if you're doing a tiny house construction, we gotta allocate for more materials, especially if we start getting into some high-end sealants and stuff, and there's been a recent specification change with the way hardy siding gets done, and there's, I don't know if it really changes the cost. In fact, it might actually lower it because it involves less caulking or no caulking on certain joints. We got this little thing here and these lower eaves we gotta deal with because apparently they were compensating for the slope on the floor, so these walls actually get taller as they go in this direction. And there was a point where the walls were over 8 feet, but the plywood stops at 8 feet, so we're dealing with that. Although it's not the end of the world, we'll figure out how to deal with that with the siding. But so yeah, progress on a build. Okay, so now it's starting to look a little more like a building. Got that window installed. We're kind of starting to run out of daylight before I could get on that door. Running into that thing with the concrete not being level, and then getting the door threshold right is a little tricky, so I got to go do a little studying on the best ways to do that. The shingles, because it's such a short run, there was a lot of trimming involved to get all our lines to end up in the right places. So, but we get to see how that's turning out. The other side isn't quite done. Obviously, the ridge cap isn't done, but we're in a rush to do a lot before it rains, and but wanted to do it right. So, you know, a lot of this stuff's getting in kind of tidy, and you know, a decent little crew, not a whole bunch of guys, should be able to get something like this done in a week, but we're running into some things, you know, some material shortages and stuff we've been catching up on. So, you know, trip to the store, that kind of a thing, that can slow things down a little bit, but it's all going to be pretty decent when it's all said and done. The other thing about small building, when we, you know, if it's not engineered to come dead nuts even on the way the plywood ends up, you end up with some scrap. I mean, there's just no way around it. But they can still come in useful, and it's a forgiving construction method. But you can see how we kind of line things up here. You know, we're pretty plumbing level too on all that stuff. Did a good tight fit on that window. I think that's going to turn out good. And we're actually not planning on doing a whole lot of electrical in here, so that's part of what's happening with that. But we'll progress on a kind of an outbuilding type of project. So there it is, small building. We got weather changes. I'm not even going to try the siding, and I'm really not the expert on that. Some other guys probably going to end up handling the siding. But wrapped, Tyvek. Probably could have used a little more tape, but at $10 a roll, like, you know, the guys that do the siding and handle that. This is basically just going to last a little while before we have a seasonal change. And then summer's coming. We got the mastic in all around. It had nasty shit to deal with, that black shit around those vents. Somebody else is probably going to have to come along and cut for vents here. I ran out of Tyvek, so I used tar paper up here. It's legal. I mean, it's legitimate stuff. When we do cedar siding, I've always done it with over tar paper, not Tyvek. So you know, kind of depends on how that goes with other people's choices on how that stuff goes. Some other guys I think are going to end up dealing with some of this trim situation down here, but we're not. Interior, you know, get that all set up. They did the gusset truss thing instead of using these tie thingy these things, which everybody else seems to want to use, and then right on the darn thing it says not for truss, or not mending plate, not for trusses, and then you see those all over people's roof trusses. So I don't know what's up with that, but those things seem to work a hell of a lot better than nails. I get that length just right so they go all the way through, but not puncturing badly. So he'll be able to construct a little attic up here at his leisure. Had that little issue with these things being not quite the same spacing, which ran into an issue with the window placement, but it's a shed and we're under 24 inches between the two king studs anyway, so I don't kind of made a command decision not to do full house framing on that kind of thing, but so yeah, that's how it looks. And then for these little soffit fit deal, we went with the bottom plate there, kind of tricky thing, drilled it and then put screen in there so that it's actually protected from spiders and critters getting in once the building's all closed up. So that's kind of, I don't know, it's code. I mean, it's something you got to do, and then you got to have some ventilation on that, or this is going to be a hot house. And what I'm guessing will eventually happen, I don't know, powered end vents would be part of that or not, but it's yeah, there's how that goes. Small building stuff. If it had just a little higher roof, we could almost make it a two-story with a loft, but with this, that's just a storage loft. That's not, there's no way a person can maneuver in there very easily.